Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the second part of the 2018-2019 season review. If you haven't seen the first part, we live streamed it yesterday, so I really do recommend you going over and watching that one before you watch this one, because obviously this is going to be covered in the second half of the season, everything after the derby at Anfield. We decided to, cover all the fixtures previous to that game yesterday, because I really think that game had a pivotal point in our season. Really, it was a pivotal point in our season, and it was quite a big point, wasn't it? Let's all be honest. I know we don't want to talk about it a lot. I know we don't like to remember what happened on that day, but it really was a big point in our season. So I thought, you know what, I'd do the first games up until then, and then I'd do the rest today. So, like I said, the seasonal review is split into two parts. So if you haven't seen the first part, please do go and check that out. It's on the channel now. It was live yesterday. It's about 47 minutes long, something like that. So it's a little bit of a long one, but get yourself a cup of tea and go and check that out. But today we'll be covering every single game that Everton played from that game onwards to, of course, Spurs' last game of the season. How well I believe Marco Silva done, the stats that some of the players ended on, top goal scorer, top assists, the clean sheets that we got, etc. So yeah, hopefully we can get through it all in a decent amount of time, so you're not all sitting there listening to me rant and rave for hours on end. I'm just going to tweet the stream out so everybody on Twitter knows that we are live, so they can come over and watch the second part. The first part did really well as well, so a massive thank you to everybody that watched that yesterday, whether you watched it live or whether you watched it after the live stream went up as a YouTube video. Massive thank you to that. Really done quite well as well, so massive thank you all. Once again, just going to tweet the stream out before we get going. Of course, pretty much just going to be a continuation of everything that we spoke about yesterday. Obviously, we ended by talking about the Cardiff City win, the 1-0 win at Goodison Park, which was the game before the Merseyside derby at Anfield. We spoke about how we started. We spoke about how, some Evertonians may, when thinking about this season, may have thought originally, we started really well. We had a point in the middle of the season where we were quite poor, and then we ended really well. But we were speaking yesterday about how we didn't necessarily start fantastically. It took us a little bit of time to get going, and once we got it going, that's when we started to play well, and that was where we got up to yesterday. Of course, the wins against Crystal Palace at Goodison Park, the win against not Crystal Palace, I've just mentioned Crystal Palace, the draw against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, obviously, beating Leicester away from home, beating Brighton as well at home with that fantastic Richarlison goal. So we got some really good results in a short period of time there, after it took us a little bit of time to get going after disappointing games against Huddersfield at home, West Ham at home, etc. And it always leading to this Merseyside derby, and it always happens every single season, doesn't it? You're sitting there every single season and you're thinking, you know what, when's the Merseyside derby? It's the first fixtures you look for when the fixtures get announced. When's the derby at Goodison and when's the derby at Anfield? And this was the game we were looking forward to, and I think most Evertonians were looking forward to it because we were on a good run of form. Like I said, we took a little bit of time to get started. We took a little bit of time to get our rhythm. Marco Silva was still messing about with the squad. He was still trying to figure out who his best starting 11 was. He was still trying to figure out who the best players were in each position. But at this point, when we were going into this game at Anfield, we were really confident, and we were sort of in the mind. And I know a lot of Evertonians said at the start of last season, realistically, we should be finishing 7th, 8th position. We should be finishing best of the rest. And, you have to understand that it is Marco Silva's first season, so it's going to be a little bit slow. There is going to be ups, there is going to be downs. We all said that at the start of the season, and I think, this point, leading into the derby at Anfield and the games before it, was sort of when a lot of Evertonians, including myself, we got a little bit carried away with the form that we were in. We started to think, well, okay, maybe we can challenge Manchester United, maybe we can really put a challenge in for the top 6. Obviously, listen, we probably should have set back and went, actually, let's just take it for what it is. We're still in the first season. We've still got a lot of games to play. There is going to be ups, there is going to be downs. We didn't. We got a little bit, caught up in the emotion, and that's what happens in football at the end of the day. You do get caught up in the emotion. Of course, going into the Merseyside derby at Anfield, it was a massive game, and I think, listen, I don't want to talk too much about it because we've done the review, we've done the instant match reaction, we've done all that, and, everybody knows how this game went down. We've spoken about it before. I think the hardest thing to take about this defeat, the hardest thing to take about this game, wasn't the fact that we were beaten in the last minute by Liverpool. We've been beaten in the last minute by Liverpool before. We were beaten in the last minute at Goodison by Liverpool by a Mane goal 2 or 3 years ago. Wasn't the fact that we were beaten by Liverpool. The hardest thing to take from this game is that we come into it on really good form, And we absolutely, in my opinion, battered Liverpool for the entire game. We had opportunities to win that game of football, and we definitely deserved at least a draw. Andre Gomez as an header, literally on the line, and God knows how he misses it. Yerry Mina has one really early on. Theo Walcott had one as well during that game, and I think that was the hardest thing to take for us Evertonians. Wasn't necessarily the defeat. Yes, the defeat was awful because it's a Merseyside derby. Yes, the way in which we conceded was horrible to take because it just to give their fans fuel to have a go at us, but it was the fact that we played so well during that game. It was the fact that, you know, we really did deserve at least a draw, if not the 3 points. You could argue that we deserved to win that game, but in typical Everton fashion, we didn't end up taking the chances that we created, and we ended up gifting Liverpool an absolute stupid goal that they didn't deserve one bit at the end of it. And that was the game that was either gonna, the players were either gonna respond to that in one or two ways. And I said this when I was doing the game review, the season of review, on Toffee TV. The players were only gonna respond in one or two ways. They were gonna respond by saying, right, we went into that game confident, we played really well against them. Let's forget about the mistake. Let's forget about the, you know, the whole catastrophe. Let's just look at what happened from the first minute to the 96th minute. Forget about the 97th minute and the final whistle, and let's just, you know, go into playing Newcastle at home and put in exactly the same performance, play how we've been playing, and come away with a result in that game as well. Or they could have let it get to them, dropped their heads and say, what's going on there? We've just been beaten in the Merseyside derby, we've gifted the goal away, you know, heads have gone, confidence has dropped, and, you know, realistically as an Evertonian, you're coming out, and it was a weird feeling. It was a weird feeling because when that goal went in, again, I don't want to talk about it an awful lot, but when that goal went in, you're sort of sitting there thinking, oh, fucking hell, where's the offside there? Come on, ref, blow your whistle. Surely there's a foul. Surely there's an offside. Surely the ball's gone out. Fuck off, it's actually counted. What has gone on there? And once you got over that initial, I don't know what the fuck's happened, you sort of step back and you went, well, okay, we've lost the Merseyside derby there, and it's never nice to lose one of them because their fans will go on like they deserved it, and their fans will go on like they're the best team in the world. But realistically, I think a lot of us stepped back and went, well, you know what, we put in a really good performance there. We were fantastic from the first minute to the 96th minute, and it was an absolute moment of madness by Jordan Pickford that lost us that game of football, an absolute moment of madness that in any other game would never have happened. A lot of fans took that, and I think it took that away from that game, and I think we sort of half expected the players to as well, and we had a run of fixtures after that realistically, you know, okay, we had a couple of really good teams in there. We had City, we had Spurs, but we had, you know, Watford, Newcastle, Brighton, Leicester, Bournemouth, all within the next few weeks after that. Again, all games where you should really realistically be picking up 3 points, especially if you're wanting to finish in a European place. And those were the games that we struggled in because of the after effects of the Merseyside derby. And, you know, if you watch the channel throughout the season, you'll notice that I was one to refuse to take that excuse when I was doing the review to the Newcastle game, doing the review to the Watford game. I refused to say no. I was saying, no, you can't use the Merseyside derby as an excuse. The lads, the professional footballers, they have to get that out of their head. They have to forget about what happened at Anfield. They have to forget about how that game ended. But that's easier said than done, isn't it? Let's be honest, you know, at the end of the day, losing a game of football like that is gutting for us fans. It must be even more gutting for the load of lads that have gone there in a Merseyside derby, put in a performance that's more than good enough to win, and then come away with absolutely nothing, and, you know, conceding such a shambolic goal. But anyway, that was sort of the point in our season. Yes, it wasn't the halfway point. Yes, it was early December. Yes, there was still a lot of games to play, but it was the point in our season that, you know, it took a massive turn from there, whether it was for the worst or the better. There's always a point in the season where it takes a massive turn, and that was ours, and it ended up being for the worst. Obviously, that's when we started to, you know, get in a little bit of a horrible run of form, and that really did continue until after we played Watford away from home, and we had that massive 17-day break to really take a look at ourselves and really reevaluate where we were and how we were going to pick points up going towards the end of the season. Because there was a point in this season where I stated we were nothing but a mid-table team. Nothing better than a mid-table team, and there was a point in this season where some fans and, you know, a lot of people on social media were thinking, if we're not careful, we could get relegated here. If we're not careful, you know, we could be in deep shit here. So I think it's important that, you know, we stopped at the Liverpool game yesterday, and we went on to talk about that as well as everything that come after that. Obviously today, because I didn't want to talk about the Liverpool game yesterday and then talk about, you know, the after effects of the Liverpool game in today's team, because I just think it all sort of leads in to one or the other. So obviously we went to Anfield, we had that catastrophe, that disappointing result, and you're sort of thinking, yeah, For the first hour or so, it's gone. For the first hour or so, you're fuming. For the first hour or so, you're thinking, what the fuck's going on there? After that, you're thinking, you know what? We played really, really well. We had a really, really good game there. We should have won the game. They're spawny bastards. They're horrible, lucky bastards. They'll go on about it for the rest of the year, but let them have their moment, because let's just go out there, continue playing how we're playing, and hopefully challenge for the top 6 place. But it didn't quite happen like that, did it? Obviously, we played Newcastle on the Wednesday afterwards, I believe it was, at home, at Goodison Park. A massive opportunity to build the confidence back up. A massive opportunity to take 3 points from a team that, let's be honest, are quite poor. And we didn't. We ended up drawing 1-1. I believe we scored in the last second. Newcastle could have scored a winner as well. You know, at the end of the day, no, it wasn't Watford where we scored in the last second, but Newcastle could have scored a winner in the last second, sorry. And at the end of the day, you know, the lads obviously clearly were affected by that Merseyside derby defeat. They were clearly affected by the fact that, you know, we couldn't manage to hold out for a draw, or we should have won the game. It wasn't like we were battered for 90 minutes and we conceded in the last minute and you go, well, you know what, it was always coming. It should have never have come, and it come in such a stupid situation. Obviously, we played Newcastle at home at Goodison Park on the Wednesday, couldn't get the result there. Fans started to get a little bit more frustrated. I dare say the players' confidence only went down after that result. We then played Watford again, a game where we scored in the last minute to gain a point. We were 2-1 down. Luca Dean fires in a fantastic free kick in the last minute. Again, another game where you're sitting there thinking, okay, you can forget about the Merseyside derby. It was a freak situation. It was a game that we should never have lost, certainly not in them circumstances, but realistically we should have come out the Merseyside derby and we should have beaten Newcastle and we should have beaten Watford. And if we'd have done that and we'd have made a statement that we'd come out and would have battered those two teams, which, let's be honest, we're capable of doing. We proved later on in the season we're capable of battering teams like that. If we'd have done that, we'd have made a point in the Merseyside derby, they'd been forgotten. Because we'd have beat the likes of Leicester, beat the likes of Palace, beat the likes of Brighton, and then we'd have had that Merseyside derby defeat, and you can go, well, okay, it's horrible because it's a Merseyside derby and their fans are going to go on about it for the rest of time. But we've come back, we've bounced back, we've beat Newcastle, we've beat Watford, so let's forget about it now. But we didn't, we struggled. We then took on Manchester City at the Etihad and we're beaten 3-1. Again, for me, a game that, despite the fact we were beaten, we looked better than the other two games. We looked better than we did against Newcastle. We looked better than we did against Watford. And I think that was an overall sort of feeling around the club and around the fan base throughout the season, is that when we played those bigger teams, we did step up. I think there was only one game, I'd say, and that was the Spurs game, which we'll talk about in a second, against the top team, where we didn't step up, where we just got absolutely turned over and where we didn't look bothered whatsoever after a certain point in the game. I think the City game, despite the fact we were beaten 3-1, we stepped up obviously a little bit. You know, we looked to be performing a little bit better. It's just the fact that we didn't have the quality to, you know, come anywhere near Manchester City on the day, which is absolutely fair enough. Just before we go on, Ian says, at the time, all Blues wanted to get them in the club as soon as possible, and with the hindsight, I think playing them again immediately would have been better. It would have, because we could have stood to them again. We could have had a go at them again. We could have showed that we can play exactly to how they want to play again, and we can stand up to them. And on another day, that goal wouldn't have went in. On another day, we could have got a result, and obviously everything would have been forgotten about if we'd have beat them then in the cup. But that's not how it went, of course. So like I said, we were beaten by Manchester City, and despite the fact we were beaten 3-1, it was somewhat of a better performance, and that's clutching at straws, really, because again, like I said, we were turned over and it was quite an easy afternoon for Manchester City, but it was still a little bit better. It was still a little bit more motivating than the games against Newcastle and Watford. We then had Spurs at Goodison Park, and for me, well, not for me, it was our biggest defeat of the season, and for me, our worst game of the season. Now, a lot of fans may forget about this. We were beaten by Spurs 6-2 at Goodison Park. Now, we were 1-0 up in that game of football and should have been 2-0 up. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scored an absolutely perfect header, nothing wrong with it at all, and it was ruled out by the officials because, again, we spoke about it yesterday. Officials, the FA, referees in this league, they're totally against Everton Football Club. The goal was ruled out for whatever bullshit reason they want to give, and next minute, Kurt Zouma and Jordan Pickford decide to run into each other. Son gets a chip, you know, becomes 1-1, and that's it. Then the floodgates open and Spurs absolutely obliterate us. And that was the first time, I think, since the West Ham game, which we were all sitting there going, we've been bladdered there. We've been absolutely embarrassed there. And like I said, after the West Ham game, when we started to see us come into a good run of form, when you started to see us beating the likes of Leicester, beating the likes of Palace, you sort of think, okay, well, maybe that West Ham game was just a one-off. Maybe it was just Marco Silva trying to have a little go for the team, trying to, you know, trying to see who can play in which positions, trying to, what's the word I'm looking for here? Trying to trying to try out basically different, styles of football, different ways of playing, different players, and it didn't work. Fair enough. Maybe you could sit back and go, fair enough, we were battered by a team that we shouldn't have been battered by, but whatever. It is what it is. The Spurs game, you couldn't make an excuse for it. We were 1-0 up, should have been 2-0 up, and we got absolutely turned over. Our biggest defeat in the most uninspiring game of the season, especially in the Premier League, I'd say. Obviously, listen, that was just before the Christmas period. It was quite clear at this time, I think, that Marco Silva and the lads weren't coping with the Christmas period as well as they should have. And listen, I understand that we played a stupid amount of games in quick succession. I understand that we only had a maximum of 3 days off at one point between games, and we ended up playing like 3 in a matter of 8 days or something stupid. And I understand that other sides had 10 days off, aka Liverpool Football Club, the jammy bastards. But we really didn't cope with the Christmas period well, and that's one of the criticisms I'd have for Marco Silva this season. Is next season, if Marco's going into the summer and he's thinking, right, what mistakes did they make last season and how do we rectify them, how do we make sure they don't make them going forward? We can talk about the inconsistency, we can talk about the substitutions, but for me, dealing with that Christmas period was one of the biggest ones, because he really didn't deal with it well. Obviously, we had the massive defeat to Spurs, and feelings were a little bit down. We were a little bit what's going on with Everton at the minute? Maybe some questions started to creep in. Is he the right man for the job? Is he not? What's going on? We played Burnley on Boxing Day, and it was a totally different performance. We went to Turf Moor and we battered them 5-1. Now listen, this isn't a Burnley team that were easily turned over, by the way. This isn't like we've gone to a side that at a championship level shouldn't be playing in the Premier League and we've absolutely obliterated them because they're shite. They were poor on the day, don't get me wrong, but we went there and we played the type of football that we've been seeing in October and November time. We played that attacking, pressing football that didn't allow teams a second to think on the ball. We went there, we had Bernard firing, we had Richarlison firing, we had Luca Dean firing, and we put 5 goals past them. We were 3-0 up in 20 minutes. And I was watching going, oh my God, what's going on here? And that was another game where you're sort of thinking, okay, we've had the difficult defeat to Liverpool, we've had the poor games against Watford and Newcastle, we've had the really, really bad result against Spurs. Is this now going to be the end of that? Is our bad run of form only a matter of 5 games? And we're beating Burnley 5-1 now. No excuse now to go on. No excuse now not to go on and beat the teams. We have Brighton, Leicester coming up, Lincoln in the Cup, Bournemouth. There was no excuse to not go on and pick up results again. But it wasn't that. It seemed like the inconsistency that we've spoken about so much this season started to creep in a little bit. And listen, we've sat here on the channel, I've sat here all season and I've said how Marco Silva needs to fix this inconsistency. There's inconsistency all around the club, and there was inconsistency all around the club during this period of time. Inconsistency in results, inconsistency in performances, inconsistency in starting 11s, inconsistency in substitutions, inconsistency in captaincies. There was inconsistency throughout the whole club at this time in the season, and I think that's one of the biggest words I'd use to describe this season. If we were using a negative word, if we were talking about ups and downs, one of the biggest downs I'd say was the inconsistency, and this was a prime example of it. We'd battered Burnley 5-1, like I said, not an easy team to beat, not a team that a lot of sides go, not a place that a lot of sides go Turf Moor and just turn teams over, but we went there and we turned Burnley over. We then played Brighton afterwards at the Amex, I believe it's called. I probably cocked that up, and we were beaten 1-0, and we were beaten by a horrible, scrappy goal, a goal that, if it would have come off a Brighton player, would have been offside, but it's only the fact that a corner comes in. I think it comes off Andre Gomez's leg, who's not watching, and absolutely free miles of space for the Brighton lad to put it in. And that was it again, a game where we conceded a goal, we couldn't quite get back into the game, and realistically, looking at the side that we had out, looking at the players that we had out, we should have had more than enough to get back into that game. We conceded a scrappy goal that you can only stand there and go, you know what, that's a bit shit, but whatever. You can't really make allowances for a ball hitting a player and luckily going to an opposition player who's standing 33 miles offside, but because it's hit one of your players, it counts. But we never really looked motivated enough to get back into that game. We never looked like we were going to step the gear up. It wasn't a performance where you'd see, okay, we've gone 1-0 down here, unluckily, let's go and get 2 or 3. And again, I'll compare it to Manchester City, and I'm not saying that we're anything like Manchester City. I'm not saying that our players are as good as theirs. I'm not saying that we're as good as them. But you look at Manchester City, they played Brighton last game of the season, and they went 1-0 down, and instantly it was 1-1 because they knew they had to step their game up in order to win that Premier League. Yes, there wasn't, Premier League status on the line when we played them, but we should have been able to step our game up and gone, well, you know what, we're not taking that, because we shouldn't have conceded that goal, so we're going to come away now and we're going to come and we're going to equalise and we're going to go for the win. But we didn't. The lads' heads seemed to drop, and I think the main issue around this point, as well as consistency, I think the main issue within the dressing room just was confidence. We lost unreal amounts of confidence with the defeat to Liverpool. The draws against Newcastle and Watford didn't help. Obviously, the result against City didn't help, even though it was a better performance. The Spurs result didn't help either. And you were sort of thinking, well, is the Burnley win enough to sort of get us back to the point that we were at before? And it was very clear with the Brighton result that it wasn't. Now, if Brighton wouldn't have scored that scrappy goal, maybe we'd have gone on to win that game, because we'd have had that little bit of confidence from the Burnley game, and maybe it'd be a different story. But they didn't. They scored a scrappy goal, and the lads clearly didn't have the confidence, clearly didn't have the motivation enough back in them yet, that fire back in them, to obviously to go on and equalise and get a result in that game. So that was obviously a really, really disappointing one to take. It was really, really tough to take, and you're sort of sitting there thinking, okay, we're getting to that point in the season that we all should have really expected. We're getting to that point where you're thinking, we're winning some games, we're losing some games, we're performing fantastically some weeks, we're performing shockingly other weeks. We then went on to play Leicester City on New Year's Day, and we were beaten 1-0 at home by, I believe it was a Jamie Vardy goal. A goal that I said in the game preview, if you mark Jamie Vardy out the game, you'll be sound. But if you give Jamie Vardy a one-on-one opportunity, 9 out of 10 times he scored. What did the defence do? They gave Jamie Vardy a one-on-one opportunity, and he scored. I believe it was a Michael Keane header, which was an absolute shocking header, by the way, and he heads it right into the path of Vardy. He scores, and again, it was another one of those games where we just didn't have the motivation and the fire within ourselves to get back into that game and get back into the get the 3 points or even a point out of that game. And obviously we'll talk later on about the siren and how that massively affected the lads and the atmosphere and that fire that we're talking about going forward. But again, classic example of not having the motivation, of heads dropping and not being able to get back into the game, was obviously the Leicester defeat on New Year's Day. We then played Lincoln in the FA Cup third round, obviously winning that game by 2-1. Bernard's first goal for Everton. Not going to talk too much about that one. Pretty much an expected win, let's be honest. And before we go into talking about the further fixtures, I'm just going to dive into the live comments. Luke says Brighton away. I don't know why we played Garner as well as 5 at the back. That made 6 at the back. Exactly spot on. That was a point I brought up when talking about the game. Was I personally just don't think 5 at the back and a Garner works. I agree with you, Luke. I think it's too defensively. I really do think it's too defensive, and it didn't work on that day, and I just don't think it works at all. And Ian says Burnley had too much Christmas pudding. Yeah, fair enough. If you're enjoying the team so far, by the way, please do leave a like and subscribe if you're new as well. If you haven't seen the channel before, please do subscribe. We're going to have obviously the rest of this season in review, and then we're going to have a load of post-season and then pre-season going into next season content over the next couple of weeks, talking about ins and outs, talking about what Marco Silva and Marcel Brands need to do going forward. So anyway, obviously we played Lincoln City. We beat them by 2-1, and that was that was fair. You can say fair enough. We were always going to batter Lincoln, let's be honest. If we didn't, there'd have been a problem. We then went on to play Bournemouth at home again, and we got a 2-0 victory, and you started to think, okay, we've beaten Lincoln now in the Cup, although it's a team that realistically we should be beating. We've beaten them in the Cup. We've beaten Bournemouth now, who are a decent Premier League side. Again, a Premier League side that not a lot of teams can go and break down easily. We're going to Southampton away, a team that were fighting relegation at this point. Now, at this point, we were sort of outsiders in the relegation question. You always knew as an Evertonian we weren't going to get relegated, let's be honest. But we were always banded about as, if we continue this poor run of form, we may well get relegated. Which I suppose was fair enough to say, considering some of the results we were having at that time. But we went to Southampton, who really were a team that were fighting relegation. And I remember this game I was at Southampton's ground. I made the 6-hour car journey down there to watch this game of football, and I really did go in confident. I thought, we've had a good couple of results, a good win last time out against Bournemouth in the Premier League. We're playing a side that, let's be honest, they're fighting relegation. Let's be honest, we should be beaten. Let's go out there and let's get a result. And we didn't. And talking from somebody that watched the game live, we were absolutely shocking. Now listen, you can't, again, I was at the game that we were beaten 6-2 by Spurs. You can't really say it was the worst performance of the season. It was the worst result of the season, but it was definitely up there. We were absolutely shocking. James Ward-Prowse scoring a worldie, but not just before Southampton opened the scoring. They were creating opportunities from the first minute. From the absolute first minute, and we never looked involved in the game whatsoever. We scored our first goal within the last 5 minutes. Gylfi Sigurdsson scored a scrappy one within the last 2 minutes, but by that time it was too late to get back into the game. We were absolutely shocking. Just going to take a drink. We were absolutely shocking. And again, that was another game that you're looking at going, well, what's Marco trying to do here? And I think this is where the question started to creep in. For me, the question started to creep in with fans when fans were seeing us winning games of football quite comfortably and then losing games of football incredibly comfortably by playing awful, literally against similar teams, against similar sides that in a similar situation. And that was exactly what happened against Southampton. We went down there, we were absolutely battered from pillar to post, and we deservedly lost that game of football. It was a long journey home, I remember it well. But again, another absolutely shocking performance. We then took on Millwall in the FA Cup. Now this was another one that I think a lot of fans didn't take well, and I think this was the game when a lot of fans started to go, is he the right man for the job? Is he really the right man for the job? Because you cannot accept that. Yes, a couple of defeats to shitty teams in the league is always going to happen, but you cannot accept what happened on that day. Obviously, we were beaten 3-2. We were up twice in that game. It was in the FA Cup, 4th round, I believe, and a team that we went to, we always knew there was going to be trouble with the fans. We always knew it was going to be hostile, but at the end of the day, a championship team that realistically we should have beaten. We should have beaten comfortably, and at the end of the day, we conceded 3 goals from 3 balls into the box, and I believe 2 of them balls were stupid free kicks given away. Luca Dean, now I'm not going to go into it because he had an absolutely unbelievable season, but he had very few poor games last season. That was one of them. He was shocking against Millwall. And the whole team as a whole was shocking. This was when the sort of zonal marking argument started to be really in its peak because we were conceding from set pieces constantly. And this was a game where Millwall literally put 3 long balls into the box and scored 3 goals from it. Now, I know there's the argument about VAR, and if VAR had been in, we wouldn't have lost the game. And that's fair enough. Maybe that's the case. Maybe if VAR would have been introduced, we wouldn't have lost that game of football. But at the end of the day, that's ifs, buts and maybes, isn't it? Let's be honest, we shouldn't have lost the game anyway. We were playing a championship side that we were very clearly better than. We set out our dominance early on, we were up, and we conceded 3 goals by balls into the box. And that was, like I said, the game where a lot of Evertonians sort of went, that isn't acceptable. I think that was along with, along with the Spurs game, along with the West Ham game early on in the season, and probably the Southampton game as well. Very few games this season where Evertonians proper fumed. There was games where we were disappointed. There was games where we were, a little bit like, we were just shit again. But very few games where Evertonians seen their arse last season. That was one of them, and rightly so as well, because we were shocking, absolutely shocking. And the goals we conceded were schoolboy goals to concede. Schoolboy lads in the under 18s, lads in the under 23s, lads playing Sunday League football on County Road, even though no one plays Sunday League football on County Road. Someone playing Sunday League football on Scotty Road could have defended those goals, and these professional footballers on hundreds of thousands of pounds a week couldn't. So that was when the frustration started to come in. We then played Huddersfield away from home and won that game again. A game that you can say, well, okay, how much do we take out of this? Do we take what we can get because it's a confidence boost and we've won another Premier League game away? Or do we literally just see this as, well, Huddersfield is shit and they're going down? So it's expected. Obviously, we then went on to play Wolves at home, the notorious for me. I remember this game well. We were battered 3-1. Andre Gomez actually scored a worldie in this game, but it was the game where I don't know whether it was right or wrongly, but I said basically in the instant match reaction that we were nothing but a mid-table side. We were nothing but a top 10 side, if that, from 15th to 9th maybe, and that was where we were going to be for the foreseeable future. And that was when I think fans were in their peak of having questions about Marco Silva. And I'm not sitting here saying everybody had questions about him, because I think a lot of us still, even at this point in the season, we're saying, well, he needs to be given time because it's his first season. He's still working with players that aren't his. He's still trying to figure out a squad that, he didn't, mould. He's still trying to figure out a starting 11. Fair enough. But I think, when you're caught up in the emotions of games of football and when you're watching these games, you do get frustrated. This was another one, obviously absolutely battered by a side that we considered to be competing with. At that time, we were competing with, well, at the end of the day, it ended up that we were competing with them for top 7. But at the time, we really did think, you know what, we're competing with these for top 7. We took them to Goodison Park and we were obliterated off the park. And it was quite clear it was the better side on the day. And I think a lot of Evertonians started to feel, well, they're just the better side in general at the minute. And that was a really tough one to take for a lot of us, because that was the game where you thought, okay, let's go out there now and let's show that we can stand up to Wolves, and let's at least show that we're the best of the rest. And we didn't on that day. We got absolutely obliterated, and deservedly so. We then went to Manchester City, and although we were beaten 2-0, or Manchester City come to Goodison Park, should I say, and although we were beaten 2-0, it was a little bit of a strange game. This was the game where Liverpool were all of a sudden winning every single game of football that they'd played. It was looking more and more likely that they were going to at least compete for the Premier League title, if not win it. Obviously they didn't win it, of course, but it was looking more and more likely that they were going to compete with City. It was a game that, you know, some Evertonians were saying they wouldn't mind losing because of the fact that it would stop Liverpool winning the league, or it might stop Liverpool winning the league. Some Evertonians were saying, I don't care about Liverpool, I just want to win this game of football because it's about Everton. That was sort of where I was in. But we ended up being beaten anyway, and I think it was a performance that we could take a lot from. Not just because you could say, oh, we done our best, but sorry Liverpool, we couldn't get the result. But more so because the 2 goals we conceded in that game, were both in the last minute of each half. One in the last minute of the first half and one in the last minute of the second half. And it was a game where we were a lot better. Again, a little bit like a game earlier on the season that we spoke about in yesterday's team, the Arsenal game away from home, where we'd been in a poor run of form, so to speak, and although we were beaten, we performed a lot better. It was, again, similar situation with the City game. We went, City come to Goodison Park, and although we were beaten, we seemed a little bit better. We were performing better. We seemed to have that little bit of anger in us, that little bit of fight, that little bit of passion, that little bit of willingness, and it showed on the pitch. And it was actually the last game at Goodison Park that we conceded, I believe, in the whole season. And I think it showed that by how I don't want to say how well we played, because we were still beaten on the day, but how much better we played considering earlier games at Goodison Park, the likes of obviously Watford, Newcastle, as well, Spurs as well. We were playing, let's be honest, the best side in the country, and we played a lot better than what we had previously in the season. We then went to Watford, of course, and again, the inconsistency kicked in. We were beaten 1-0 away from home at Watford, and this is when a lot of fans started to say, you know what, maybe he's not the right man for the job. Maybe we just can't get that consistency. We just can't get the results even when we're playing well. Maybe we need to start thinking about what we can do next season. And then we had a 17-day break, and we'll talk about the 17-day break in just a second. I just want to dive into the live comments just to keep up to date with everyone before we go into talking about that unbelievable, amazing, boss, brilliant 17-day break. Luke says, Leicester wasn't a Michael Keane header, it was a shocking header from Walcott. Keane miscontrolled it, Pereira puts it through first time, Vardy scores. Fair enough. However you want to describe it, it was quite a poor goal to concede, and at the end of the day, a shocking result. Alex says, would you take Indy Brom? I don't even know how to say that. From Schalke, I don't know enough about him very clearly, so I can't really say. And Luke says, games where we conceded from a set piece: Southampton, Bournemouth, Huddersfield, Brighton, home and away, Lincoln, Millwall, Wolves, Man City, Watford, Newcastle. Fucking hell, that's a lot of games. Exactly. And that's one of the points that Marco Silva needs to look at going into next season. He will step back and he will look at what happened last season. He will look at what went wrong, and hopefully he works on that. And I think it's quite clear that in this 17-day break that we'll talk about in just a second, he worked on set pieces, he worked on defending, because we very rarely conceded a set piece after that. We very rarely looked threatened from a set piece after that. Once he had a settled starting 11, that's when we started to see better performances, and like I said, we'll talk about them in just a second. If you are enjoying this team so far, please do leave a like. It really does mean a massive amount to me, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It only takes a second. I think we're 14 subscribers away from 500, and if we could hit that anytime in the foreseeable future, it'd be absolutely unbelievable. So a massive thank you all for that. But anyway, like I said, we had a 17-day break. Now, we had the break purely because I think there was an international break at the time, and we just never played footy, basically. I think there was a FA Cup, and then it was an international break or something like that, and we ended up just not being involved. And the lads had time to go away, to look at themselves in the mirror, take a long, hard look at themselves and realise, what am I doing here? Why aren't I performing to the level that I want to? Why aren't I going out there giving 110% for this shirt every single week? And Seamus Coleman recently was interviewed by Toffee TV, and he said that the lads had a lot of time. They had a couple of days off during that period of time to sit back and enjoy themselves with the family, get a little bit of pressure off them, and they had a lot of time to step back and think, what are we doing? And I think Marco Silva had a lot of time as well to step back and think, what am I doing? What is going wrong here? How do I fix this? Because he knew at the time that, although a lot of Evertonians might have still been backing him, although a lot of Evertonians might have still been saying, you know what, you've got your total backing, you've got our total backing, we understand that it's still the first season. There was still some Evertonians going, this isn't good enough at all, and if this doesn't improve, maybe you shouldn't be here next season. And I think he did. He took that on board, and like we said clearly with the set pieces, he also took on board what had been going wrong in that period of the season, from the derby at Anfield to, like I said, the defeat to Watford before that break. He took on board everything that we were doing wrong. Set pieces were a massive one. Not being able to defend set pieces, not being able to perform zonal marking as well as we should. Consistency, another one as well, and confidence. And the lads' fight and willingness and passion to want to play for Everton Football Club was another one. And I think Marco Silva really did nail him, to be fair to him, in the remaining games of the season. So obviously we come back after that 17-day break and we played Cardiff away from home. Again, a team that, okay, we're looking to be relegated, okay, aren't the best side in the world, but you know what, they don't often get battered at home, and we took them, we went obviously over to Cardiff and we beat them 3-0, and it was a game that you're sort of thinking, okay, don't want to get too ahead of ourselves because we've seen us win games of football in that fashion previously and then the next week be beaten. But, we've gone there, we've battered them 3-0. They never had a sniff. They never had any real opportunity, let's be honest. Let's just take that for what it is and let's be positive going into the next game, which was, of course, the Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. Now, there was a lot riding on this game, not just because it's a Merseyside derby, not just because, we want to beat Liverpool, and not even just because of what happened at Anfield earlier on in the season, not just because we wanted to get our revenge back from that absolute catastrophe that happened earlier on in December, but for me, a lot more was riding on the fact that we're just beating Cardiff after coming off a 17-day break. It was clear from the Cardiff game that the lads had had a look at themselves. It was clear from the Cardiff game that we were performing a lot better. It was clear from the Cardiff game that defending set pieces was obviously worked on. It was clear from the Cardiff game that Marco Silva had started to find his starting 11. He'd started to stumble across changes like Richarlison on right wing, which is something Luke pointed out in the live comments, stumbled upon something with Richarlison on the right wing. It was when he started to realise that Bernard can play on the left and play consistently on the left too. So obviously we took Liverpool to Goodison Park and we all knew, listen, it's a Merseyside derby. We can play out of our arts exactly like we did at Anfield and still be beaten on the day. We can play poorly and get something out of the game. It just is what happens with Merseyside derbies. 5 minutes before the kickoff of the Merseyside derby, something happened that massively changed our season for the better, in my opinion, and that was the siren. Now, it might be cliche, it might be a little bit cringe that I'm still going on about it, but I don't really give a shit, because for me, it massively changed our season. The use of the Tony Bellew, Z-Cars entrance, or even just the siren, whatever you want to call it, and the use of the banners, the use of the atmosphere that the lads of the originals created, absolutely benefited Everton Football Club so much. The fans were shocked by it. I think the players were shocked by it. I think hardly anybody knew it was going to happen. Obviously, listen, we were sitting there waiting for Z-Cars as per usual. Everybody in the ground was nervous. Everybody in the ground was optimistic and excited because it's a derby. But I think the feeling around the place massively was, of course, it's a Merseyside derby, anything could happen. We don't want to give them another win. We don't want to help them towards their possible challenge for the league title. And then Tony Bellew's Z-Car started to play 5 minutes before kickoff, and every single Evertonian, listen, if you're an Evertonian at Goodison Park, you know what that song is. You know the war siren, you know the Z-Cars that Tony Bellew, as you know that, you're not entertained, you know all that, because we've supported Tony Bellew throughout his years in boxing. And if you didn't know that, you were a bit, what's going on here? And even if you knew that, you were a bit, oh my god, they're playing the sirens. Obviously, 5 minutes before kickoff, the siren goes off, everybody's on their feet. That raw moment, the nerves, the optimism, whatever feeling you had sitting in your seat at Goodison Park or sitting at home watching that game, it left you. Whether you were nervous, excited, whether you were, a little bit not arsed, doesn't matter what you were feeling, it left you. And it left you for pure heart, pure pure passion and pure fucking come on Blues, let's absolutely obliterate these bastards today, let's go at them. As soon as you heard that siren, you went, oh my god, it's fucking time to go. And the siren signifies a lot of things, and we've spoken about it previously. We've spoken about how it signifies, obviously, it's time to go to war, how it signifies, a little bit of amnesty is the word, how it signifies the away fans to get a little bit scared, a little bit, back off a little bit, intimidating. It's really, really intimidating. And every single Evertonian stood up and went, fucking come on, as soon as they heard that, because that give the fans a boost that we massively needed. Atmosphere was a massive issue at Goodison Park during this season, and it has been a massive issue for quite some time. The fact that we couldn't get an atmosphere at Goodison Park, the fact that fans were literally just going, including myself, and just watching games and not really getting involved, it was really, really poor, and it was sad to see, because I remember the times at Goodison Park under Moyes when we were absolutely unbelievable atmospherical wise. We would outsing anybody, we would be unreal week after week. It wasn't like that this season until Everton Football Club started to contact the originals, started to use the siren, for example, and that was when we seen an absolute massive change in everything. The siren went off, it got the fans on their feet, it got the fans screaming, it got the fans chanting, it got the fans singing, and it got us up for the game of football. And in doing that, it got every single one of them lads that wore that blue shirt on that day up for that game of football as well. Ian's just made a fantastic point in the comments. Can't remember hearing the shite at Goodison. Exactly. The support's shite anyway. It's a myth anyway. But they sat down and didn't say a fucking word throughout that entire game. The worst support I've seen at Goodison in years, because they sat down and they were scared. They were intimidated and they went, fucking hell. This is a Lions den when it gets going. And that's exactly what happened. It got going. It got going with the siren. It got going with the chanting. It got going with the songs. And obviously, the lads obviously took that on board. And they started to look at Goodison and think, we have to show that exact passion. We have to show that exact fight. We have to give back what we're getting here. And that's what they done. They done that in the Merseyside derby. They give everything back. We ended up, again, getting a draw in a game that we realistically could have won. A game that we, a lot of people had said we should have won. But that was the turning point for me, atmospherical wise, certainly at Goodison Park, that sort of created that bond and that special relationship between the players and the fans. Because previously, in previous years, and with other clubs as well, not just Everton, fans and players maybe struggle to have that bond these days, because we all know players are on massive contracts, earning stupid amounts of money a week, and fans are treated like customers by the likes of Sky, by the likes of BT, and by the likes of your club as well. Not talking about Everton, but a lot of fans feel like they're treated like customers by their clubs. But I think that was the turning point for us that really created that relationship between the fans and the players, created that relationship between the fans and Marco Silva. It was when Marco Silva come out after it and said, listen, if the atmosphere is even 30% of that in every game, then 70% of our job is done. And it showed on the pitch. Obviously, we ended up getting a draw out of that game, which ended up being a decent result. We then went to Newcastle, and again, 2-0 up with 20 minutes to go, lost that game 3-2, because I don't want to point in one specific player, but Jordan Pickford had an absolute shocker. He let the Newcastle atmosphere get to him. He let the rivalry between Newcastle and Sunderland get to him. And he just had the shocker. And we ended up bottling a game that realistically we should have won. But I don't want to talk about that too much, because again, realistically we were in the driver's seat in that game and we should have won it, but we bottled it, and that is what it is. We then obviously went on to play Chelsea, beating them 2-0 at Goodison Park, and I want to cover Chelsea, Arsenal and Manchester United in sort of one segment here, because obviously we played West Ham in between them games and Fulham as well. But battering Chelsea, coming out in the first half of the Chelsea game and not looking fantastic whatsoever, not looking brilliant, but coming out in the second half and looking unreal. Marco Silva coming out at the end of the game and saying, being asked the question, what happened? Why was the performance so different in the second half to the first half? And he said, because I actually went into the dressing room and I said to the lads at half time, why aren't you doing what we've been looking at and saying? Why aren't you doing what we've been working on and saying? Why aren't you performing like that? And he said the lads went out in the second half and performed that we've been performing and saying, and that's why we won that game of football. And that was massively inspiring to take, and that was unbelievable, that result. We then went to West Ham away again, another tough fixture, obliterated them, won that game by 2-0, took Arsenal to Goodison Park, battered them off the park, 1-0, but again, could have been 4 or 5. We then went to Fulham, of course, and were beaten. I put that down to arrogance, I put that down to naivety, I put that down to Marco Silva and the lads turning up and just thinking we're playing a relegated team, we're going to batter them. It never ended up like that, of course, but again, another game that you sort of think, yes, it's really, really poor, yes, it's something we have to look at the end of the season, yes, it's something that we have to work on, getting that consistency, but oh well, whatever. We then played Manchester United at home, a fantastic opportunity to forget about the Fulham game, and we did. We battered them 4-0, absolutely obliterated them, the best game of the season in my opinion. And again, like I said, I wanted to group the United, Arsenal and Chelsea game together because I've spoke about this before. I spoke about it on Toffee TV on Monday. I've spoke about it numerous times before. It wasn't the fact that we beat these teams, it wasn't the fact that we come away with the 3 points, it was the fact that the performance that we put in against these sides was better performance than I've seen Everton put in against the top side in my lifetime. We didn't just batter them. We didn't just beat them on a one-off. These teams, these top 6 teams with the Hazards and Paul Pogbas and all this shite, they didn't have a touch of the ball. They didn't have a single opportunity to do anything to hurt us because we didn't let them. We played as if a Man City would play against these sides. We obliterated them off the pitch, all 3 of them. And after the Arsenal game, when you were playing Manchester United, you're tuning up and you're thinking, this is what we do. We just batter top sides. Okay, the Chelsea game, you were going, boss result, that amazing result. Can we do it against Arsenal? After Arsenal, you were going, fucking hell, this is brilliant. When you were tuning up against United, you sort of almost went, yeah, fucking hell, these are shit. Easy win. And that says a lot. And that shows how far we've come since last season. Obviously, when we had big fat Sam Allardyce, I probably shouldn't have said that, but when we had Sam Allardyce, of course, and we might have been scraping results, but we weren't performing like we've been performing under Marco Silva at times this season, and that was a prime example of another absolutely unbelievable win. Some fantastic goals scored in that game as well, and again, another win against the top 6 side where it's not just a win, is it? It's not just 3 points, it's a performance that we've absolutely obliterated them in. We then went to Palace, and although we should have realistically got the 3 points in that game, we just couldn't find the back of the net on that day, and that happens at times in the season. It was a little bit more of a gutting one, this one, because we were in the position to finish in the top 7. We were really challenging for that top 7 place, and this was the game that pretty much solidified the fact that we weren't going to get it. But again, it's one of them games that you'd have to look at and you'd have to go, fair enough, they happen at times in the season, so fair enough, it is what it is. We then took Burnley to Goodison Park, obviously last home game of the season, battered them, smashed them to bits, easy win. Obviously the lads done a lap of honour at the end of that. Kurt Zouma getting a massive round of applause, Andre Gomez getting a massive round of applause, as well as every single other player. And then of course we went to Spurs last game of the season with 3 key players out. We had Seamus Coleman out, who was playing fantastically at the time. We had Richarlison out, who was our leading goal scorer, and we had Dominic Calvert-Lewin out, who was playing, like I said, absolutely unbelievable at that time. We had Kurt Zouma at right back, we had Cenk Tosun, who's hardly played and not performed this season, and we had Theo Walcott, who's hardly played and not performed this season, and we still went to Champions League finalists and got a draw. And again, on another day, would have won that game if we didn't concede a stupid free kick on the edge of the box to a lad that scores free kicks for fun. Would have won that game. We all said, coming after the 17-day break, we all said when we were beating these teams like Chelsea, we all said when we beat Arsenal, we need to finish the season strong. Now, if we can finish the season strong, we can accept that it was always going to be a rollercoaster season. We can accept that, there's going to be times where we're fantastic, there's going to be times when we're awful, but if we can end the season strong, we can take that confidence into the summer. We can hopefully go and build on the squad by bringing in a couple of new additions, getting rid of some of the dead wood, and then we can confidently go into the next season. And that's exactly how we ended the season, and that was it. Thus concluded the 2018-19 Premier League season for Everton, finishing 8th. I don't know the exact stats. I think it was something like 15 wins or something like that. But finishing 8th, and some really, really big wins in there. Some massive ups. Yes, there was downs. The biggest one being the derby at Anfield. Spurs at home as well. But realistically, some massive ups. Dominating sides like Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, going away to Spurs and stepping up to them, and realistically should have beaten them. You could say, oh, Spurs didn't have this player, Spurs didn't have that player, neither did Everton. So that is what it is. And obviously, the lads that we signed in the summer embedding fantastically into the season. Dean, Player of the Year. Richarlison, Young Player of the Year. Zouma, fantastic, and we need to keep him. Gomez, similar. Yerry Mina, okay, had a couple of injuries and didn't quite get it underway as we wanted him to, but hopefully we see more of him. And Bernard, as the season went on, the fitter he got, the better he got, and what a fantastic footballer he is. So we'll talk about, some of the end of season stats in just a second. I just want to dive back into the live comments before we end up the stream. Where are we? Alex says, Indy Bomb, he's a right back. I'll have a little look at him and let you know in the next couple of weeks, but we definitely do need right back cover, that's for sure, especially if John Joe Kenny is going to go out on loan. Ian says, I was really worried about the Cardiff game. If they'd have won, they'd have been 3 points behind us, and we had 4 of the top 6 coming at home. Exactly, and that was another reason why that game wasn't just us going to Cardiff City with a side that were fighting relegation. It was massive amounts riding on that game of football, and we went and we absolutely blattered them. Luke says, you lost the league at Goodison Park. Yes, they did. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Ian says, can't remember hearing the shite at Goodison. Of course, because they didn't. I don't even think they turned up, mate. Luke says, wonder what happened to the atmosphere. Definitely didn't have anything to do with Martinez, Koeman and Allardyce. Wouldn't have done with it, mate. Luke says, one of the best performances I've seen against the top 6 side was 3-0 Arsenal 2014. That was until Theo Walcott, of all people, sealed the 4-0 win against United. I agree, spot on, another one. But again, that 3-0 win against Arsenal felt like it was a fantastic performance, a fantastic game. Arsenal didn't get near us, but it almost felt like a little bit of a one-off, whereas these games, it was quite clear that it wasn't a one-off. Luke says, I'm on a month-long loan at Spurs before I can come back to Everton. I think a lot of Evertonians will be in the same boat. And Alex says, what starting 11 do you want for next season? I want the starting 11 that ended last season. Ended the Burnley game, should I say. AKA Zuma Gomez in there, Gay in there, and I want a striker as well. And hopefully right back cover. But we'll talk about that in coming streams. We're going to talk about, going into next season. We're going to talk about ins and outs. We're going to talk about Marco Silva and Marcel Brands and how they need to approach this summer. We'll do all that in the next couple of weeks, so don't forget to stay subscribed to the channel and make sure you're coming back every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, although next week it'll be Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, I believe. Make sure you're coming back to the channel and, keeping up to date with all the latest sort of post-season content. We've still got a couple of videos coming for the end of last season, and then, of course, all of the stuff going into the next season as well. Really, really exciting time to be an Evertonian. But anyway, like I said, massive things to take out of last season for me. Just as a sort of overall, summary type section, I'd say we need to be a lot more consistent against sides that we realistically should be beating. We need to be a lot more consistent overall. We need to be a lot more consistent in terms of the starting 11, captaincy, in terms of like I said, playing sides that we realistically should be beating and beating them. But I think Marco Silva sort of learned that, and he proved that by the fact that the last 10 to 8 games of the season, we really did keep the same starting 11. We had the same setup, and that was only changed when we had to through injury or suspension. And like I said, yet Silva needs to keep his starting 11. If we can sign Gomez, if we can sign Zuma on a permanent, if we can keep it to Sagana Gay, then for me, that's 50% of your transfer window done. If we can bring in a striker, that's another 50%. And then obviously the selling players is on a different platform as well. But just some end of season stats here. Top goal scorers, Gylfi Sigurdsson ended with 13 goals, along with Richarlison. Top assists, Gylfi Sigurdsson ended with 6, Bernard getting 3, and Luca Dean in the middle with 4. And then Jordan Pickford keeping 14 clean sheets throughout the season. I believe he was the fourth highest clean sheets total now. For a lad that had a shocker against Liverpool at Anfield in terms of the last minute of the game, a shocker against Newcastle, a lad that a lot of fans have criticised this season for certain games, it's not bad, is it? I think only Chelsea, City, Liverpool, and I think that was it. Yeah, Chelsea, City and Liverpool, their goalkeepers kept more assists than Jordan Pickford last season. And you'd have to take your hat off to him for that. But anyway, that's going to do it for today's live season review, part number 2. Like I said, we haven't seen part number 1 where we talk about every single game from pre-season up until the Merseyside derby at Anfield. Please do go and check that out. That is on the channel right now, so do check that out if you haven't already. Leave this video a like if you have enjoyed as well. It really does mean a massive amount to me, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second. Don't forget to join us on Friday. We're going to be doing a Blues news episode. There's been a load of news in the last couple of weeks for Everton. Transfer rumours, players in, players out, some stuff regarding the stadium as well, so don't forget to join us for that. I do apologise about missing it, but like I said, we were just trying to get all of the post-season content out of the way, and then we'll do a massive Blues news episode at 6:15 on Friday, talking about all of that. And then leading into next week, we're going to be talking about some ins and outs. We're going to be talking about, who most impressed me last season, and we're going to be talking about how Marco Silva and Marcel Brands need to approach the transfer window and need to approach the summer leading in to the 2019-2020 Premier League season. So a load of content on the channel over the next couple of weeks, starting with, of course, Friday's a Blues news episode. So don't forget to join me for that one at 6:15 for all of the latest news on Everton Football Club. A massive thank you to everybody for watching today's live stream. It really does mean a massive amount to me. If you haven't already, please do leave a like on it. It really means a lot to me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, if you're watching it as a YouTube video afterwards, leave all your comments in the comment section down below. What did you think about this season? Was it expected for you? Did you get a little bit caught up in the emotions at time in the season and you were thinking, oh my god, can we finish in the top 6? And at times you were thinking, oh my god, maybe he's not the right man for the job. Let me know your thought process throughout the whole season and how you are feeling now. We've finished 8th, just outside the Europa League position, but we've ended the season strong. How do you feel? Let me know in the comment section down below. Alex says, before you go, young Gloria, thanks. I still don't know what that means, mate. I still don't know what that means. But anyway, massive thanks to everybody for watching. Please leave a like if you have enjoyed. Like I said, I'll be back at 6:15 on Friday for another Blues News episode. Do not miss it. Should be an interesting one. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.